and welcome to the Sector 1 Motorsport podcast in partnership with Formula Careers. On today's episode, I am joined by motorsport presenter and events host. She currently works with WTF1, Daytona Motorsports on the Jamie Chadwick race series, and she's hosted events for the likes of Aston Martin F1 Team. Please welcome Amber Jones. Amber, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. What an introduction. I'm used to giving introductions, so it's so nice to sit back, hear everything I've been up to. I'm like, oh yeah, I do that and I do that. It's quite
I,
nice.
I feel like you're sat there, tick, tick, tick. Yep, I do that. I do
I'm like,
that.
wow, very well researched. You've seen this, you've seen that. So yeah, I love it.
I know I've given you a little bit of an introduction there, but we do like to hear our guests introduce themselves a bit. So for those who may not be so familiar with yourself, could you give us a little bit of an introduction?
How long do you want the intro? Is this like short or is this just like a sentence? This is what I do.
Short and sweet. Keep it short and snappy.
Okay, good, because you know I can talk for England, so I'm like, oh, I started this and I'm doing that. But yeah, I'm Amber Jones, I'm a motorsport presenter, and in motorsport presenting, I do like event host and media training and all sorts. I race myself as well, so work with great brands like Formula One, Formula E, Ginetta, all the amazing brands in motorsport, basically. So that's what I do.
So let's go back to the very beginning. We know you're working in motorsport, but where did that love of motorsport stem from?
So I say that it's my dad, but he's like, no, it's not. He's like, it's not me. So he loved Formula One. He's always watched Formula One since I grew up. But I loved karting. And he's like, that you did not get that from me at all. That is like you off your own back. Don't know why. I just loved go-karting. So like birthdays, I'll go-karting. I try and get all my girls to come and all the boys and we'd all go. And then when I got to like, I think it must have been about 16, that's when I started to take an interest in Formula One because genuinely I wasn't interested until my dad was like, you know, they start in go-karting. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to watch Formula One. Then Drive to Survive came out, so that definitely pushed my love, I think, for Formula One because you got to see all the behind the scenes. But yeah, I'd say it was just there. I don't know where the influence came from. Maybe like subconsciously it was my dad, but I don't know.
I know a lot of people don't really start thinking about careers till later on in life, but was that something you were considering when you were karting?
I wanted to be a race driver.
Yeah.
Like I was like, right, Dad, come on. Yeah, we're gonna do it. And he was like, who's paying for that? Because it's not me. So yeah, then my dreams got crushed quite quickly. And I loved acting. So that was my path. Like I was, doing GCSE drama and then I was doing films outside of school and theatre and all of that. And my parents sort of, you get worried parents when their child's like, I want to be an actor and I'm going to go to drama school. And they're like, no, 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 no. Please don't do that because they're just worried that you go to drama school and you come out of it like, oh, I'm working in a pub for like 10 years. I've not got my big break yet. I'm not in Hollywood. And they didn't want that for me. So they were like, why don't you do acting and something else? And I was like, yeah, that's true. And then my dad, obviously, when I started watching Formula One with him, he's like, you could be the next Natalie Pinkham. And I was like, actually, yeah, that's quite good. And then all my friends at school were like, you should be a presenter. Like in drama, we used to do, like Jeremy Kyle warm-ups. That
Oh,
was our
goodness.
warm-ups, which was just hilarious. Obviously, like you'd have a few of the people in my class being like the guests on Jeremy Kyle, and I was always Jeremy Kyle. Like everyone was like, Amber, you're Jeremy Kyle. So I think from their sort of like gentle push, being like, you should be a presenter, that's when I was like, no, I can do it. And then I went to uni and studied like media and presenting, but like all sorts. It was like editing and videography and all of that. But then just fell in love with the presenting like 10 times more.
Yeah, so I was going to say, you obviously studied media and performance at the University of Salford. When you started that degree, did you know that presenting was the thing for you, or did you still kind of have your options open?
Like when I think about the first few, like, I don't know, did you go to university?
Yeah,
So you know when you do the, introduce yourself on like the first day at uni?
I
Yeah.
hate that. Yes.
Exactly. You're thinking like, what do I say? What do I say? I remember I was always like, hi, I'm Amber and I love Formula One. And like, yeah, maybe I'd like to be a Formula One presenter or something like that. So I must have known, but then I only really did a lot of acting in the first 2 years. And then I think it was like the end of the second year we did presenting, but the presenting module was literally, what, 4 months? So I only really did out of a 3 year course about 4 months of presenting. But I loved it so much more. I don't know what it was, but I fell out of love with the acting. I think because I was watching Formula One like every weekend, and I was with my uni's racing team, Salford Racing, so I did a lot of work with them. And I think as my love for racing and presenting grew, I was like, okay, yeah, this is the career path. We're not even going to think about being an actor anymore.
But you talk about uni introductions there, and I'm just thinking about what I did in my first year as they come around the room and they go, "So, what's your name? Introduce yourself. What do you want to do?"
Yeah.
I remember my thing was, "Hi, I'm Cyd, and I really just want to get paid to talk." And do you know
I
what? I
love that.
stand by that. That's still exactly what I want to do.
Exactly, because that's like talking about anything, you know what I mean? It could be motorsport, or it could be food, or it could be clothes. You're just getting paid to talk.
Exactly. It's so much fun. Now, you talk about working for the racing team at your university. Now, I tried to do this. But unfortunately, as some of the things go, I was bombarded with sexism and I
Yes.
absolutely hated it. Everything about
Yeah.
that racing team was being completely and utterly mansplained to me. And I was like, do you know what? I don't have it in me to fight it. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to leave that to the side. I'm curious, have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there was only like I think two girls or like three girls per year, like on the team. As the year sort of went on, you get another one, but then like two would sort of leave, and then it was only really two or three like at once. And this was like a mixture of like on the engineering side and the media side, so there wasn't a lot of girls at all. So I definitely felt a little bit of sexism, but it was weird, really, because I was the head of media, so I think they they trusted me a lot because obviously I had to come in, but you do sort of just feel like you are getting mansplained about a lot of things if you don't know anything. And like, I remember I got a job with Aston Martin and I came back to be like, surely my racing team is going to be absolutely buzzing for me. And no one cared. And I was like, oh, I was like, guys, guess what? I've worked at Aston Martin. It's really cool. I've mentioned us. I spoke about Salford Racing. Like, it's not just about me, it's about the team. And it just felt like no one cared. And there was just this weird, like, nature, which made me really upset. But I think when there's a lot of lads, let's say, you do get that lad banter. And, you know, you can be a girl and also have that lad banter. But if you're not, it can be a bit uncomfortable. And I think you can definitely experience that sexism. But for me, it was so long ago now. I'm actually struggling to like remember, but I do remember when I was there, I was feeling a bit like, oh, I'm not taken seriously and what's going on, but not by everyone. I think as the years went on and certain people with those personalities left the team, then it was, you know, amazing. It's completely different.
Well, we'll chat a little bit more about women in motorsport later on. But for now, I want to talk about a little bit which is going on at the minute. So, you signed with WTF1 Talent Agency. How beneficial do you feel signing with people like that is for a job like you've got? Do you think it's kind of needed, maybe?
It's a funny one, really, because WTF1 Talent, which is now called WTF, because they're sort of branching outside of Formula One, so about lifestyle and all these different sort of genres, signing with them probably isn't necessary to be a presenter. Because I remember when I had my interview, so they contacted me and then I did my interview and they were like, oh, we're not really looking for presenters. And I was like, why have you contacted me then? What's this about? And I was like, I can do content creation, obviously, if you need me to, because I think as a presenter, you need to do a lot of different mediums. And then, you know, they signed me, obviously, but it is more of a content creation agency. So I think any advice that I would give to someone that wants to do like a similar role to what I'm doing is, you know, it's probably best to go for a presenter agency, or you know, go for something like, say, if you want to go to a public speaking agency, or find your niche. So like, it's been really beneficial. The team are great, you know, we get to go to all these amazing events and things like that. They don't necessarily book you lots of jobs because the agency is really designed to just put you in the room. So it's like, we can get you in a lot of different rooms in the motorsport industry, but it's up to you to sort of fight for yourself. So it's a little bit different, I'd say, like a normal agency, but it's great because it gets me to so many places that I wouldn't have been able to get to otherwise.
You've mentioned it already, Aston Martin. I want to know how that opportunity presented itself, because being able to have that on your CV at the age we're both at is absolutely incredible. How did that come to be?
Yeah, thank you. That was like terrifying when it came around because I was in second year uni and I had a friend at Aston Martin and I had like my first presenting job, like first paid presenting job was this week. It was in like some random week in like June in like 2022, I think it was. And obviously, you know, I was quite nervous for that job because I'd never done a paid presenting job before. That same week, I get a text from my friend at Aston Martin being like, are you free on Friday? And this is Wednesday. So I only got 2 days to sort of freak out. And he was like, yeah, are you free on Friday? Because we need a presenter. And I was like, no, surely not. This is no. I thought I was going to work with Formula One in like 5 years, 10 years. You do loads of different jobs and then you get to Formula One. And I was like, I can't say no. Because if I say no, Amber is going to beat herself up a few years later when we're struggling to get jobs. So I was like, I'm going to have to say yeah. And I remember going around to like all my lecturers to be like, any advice? And oh my gosh, I'm going to work with Aston Martin. This is amazing. And then, yeah, literally 2 days later, turned up, went to the factory and did this job. And I loved it. I thought it was the best thing ever. So I was like, okay, breather. This is amazing. This is what I want to do. Like, I've really figured it out. So it was very on a whim how it came about. And I feel like it's luck and hard work. I say this to everyone, you need to work hard, but hard work will only take you so far because you need to have a little bit of luck to get these jobs. So my engineer friend didn't just say, oh, let's just get her in because I know she wants to be a presenter. Like, he had seen all of my stuff with Salford Racing, so he was like, I know she can do it. So it's sort of the hard work because I've got all the evidence, but then the luck of having a friend that worked at Aston Martin.
Yes, and networking is so incredibly important. And I feel like a question that always arises when you talk about networking is, how do you do it? What would you say, in your opinion, how do you network and network well?
Do you know what? I say this everywhere, and I should be sponsored by this brand for how much I talk about them. LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just a godsend. And then I think I've told a few people to get on LinkedIn, and they're like, Amber, I've not got a job yet. And I'm like, no, you might not get a job from LinkedIn, but just network. You go on there and you type in, someone that has the job role that you want, or someone that works in the similar realm to it, really. Say if, you're looking for directors because you want them to spot you, just connect with them. And I don't mean like bombard everyone on LinkedIn, because I never sent messages to anyone. I would just connect. And it's like a slow process. They see your stuff, you might get a message. And then, if you really want to message them, drop them a message, drop them an email. But networking is the best thing you can do. I just think, don't force it. Don't be like, hi, my name is, and I really want to do this. It's, go up to that person, have a normal conversation with them. At the end, you drop in, oh yeah, I'd love to get more experience in the motorsport industry. Is there any advice or any racing series you can point me towards? Any like grassroots level, like all these things, try and work your way up. But networking is your best asset, but just be yourself.
Definitely. I feel like networking is almost like a slow burning relationship. You've just got to
Yeah.
let it do its thing, and then it'll blossom into a beautiful
Yeah.
fire or something
You
like
don't want to scare them. Like, that's the thing. People are like, hi, and this is my whole history. And they sort of, you send too many emails and too many like add-ons in the email. And this person probably hasn't got all the time in the world to look through that. So it's exactly what you say. It's slow, it's build that relationship, and they will come back to you if they think you're the right person.
Perfect. Right. Let's talk about the work you're doing with the Jamie Chadwick race series. Can you explain to us exactly what it is and what you were doing with them?
Yeah, so the Jamie Chadwick race series is at Daytona Motorsport. So it's basically just designed to sort of help girls push on their karting career. So it's an all girls racing series. And I think there's like a few rounds at all the different tracks in Daytona Motorsport. So it's great, really. And they hold loads of different events. We went to Williams recently. I did a Q&A with Jamie, and then it's given the girls like the chance to explore the Williams factory and, talk more about how they can progress in their careers. So it's a really, really great initiative to have someone like Jamie Chadwick push that and mentor these girls. Like, they had the Jamie Chadwick School, which only ran for, I think, a number of weeks. It was quite short, but it was with really, really young girls that a lot of them hadn't even karted before. And we did some like media training with them. And it's just great. It's meant to make a community, really. So these girls be like, oh, I feel so comfortable, starting my karting career or just starting my karting hobby. Because when I was younger, I didn't have that. Like, a lot of the girls didn't want to go karting, and I just think it's because you don't see it. Like, at that age, there was nothing. There was like no initiatives. There wasn't many, female races to look up to. So, you need something now to like push that. And that's exactly what this series is doing. So I just hop on some rounds and some events and do a little bit of media training, Q&A, help Jamie out on the series. So it's really great to be attached to. Genuinely, nearly started crying. I was so close to start crying when we did this media training because the girls are all so young and they're interviewing each other, and I brought them up on stage and like they get to interview me and I was interviewing them, and it was just the most beautiful thing ever. I want my kid, when I have kids, I want my kid to be a racer. So I think I'm crying for sort of past Amber who wanted loads of girls to race with, and then future Amber with her kids, hopefully.
So you talk about your karting a lot that you did as a kid. Do you think that kind of benefits you now presenting on the sport that you kind of were interested in as a kid and you were in the car? Because I sometimes think when I'm talking about cars, I don't really know much about being in the car. So I feel like I kind of lack that aspect. Do you think you kind of have that edge?
Do you know, I think now I'm getting it back because now I'm actually doing quite a lot of racing now. It is very, very helpful when it comes to presenting because now I can actually talk about, how the driver's feeling, or, why they didn't sort of make that corner correctly because the entry wasn't like good or the exit wasn't good or whatever. So it definitely helps, but I think it helps more from a pit lane reporting role, I'd say, because if you're just doing general hosting or interviewing like podcast, if it's not really technical, it's not about cars and karts and the racing itself, you don't really need to have that knowledge. But if it's, something like Sky Sports F1 or anything that you are going to talk about the technicality of racing, you definitely need to have it. I think it just helps. So when I did the GT Cup Championship, it helped me a lot more because I can ask different questions. But my co-presenter was a racer, an ex-racer, so it was great because anything I didn't know, I would then obviously bounce off him and then ask him questions, and it was really nice to work with him. So it definitely helps, but it's never too late to get that info.
Definitely, definitely. So you speak about how you're working with different series, different championships. How do you research and prepare ahead of a weekend?
Oh, I love researching. I'm such a geek. Like, I think that's what I love the most about uni. Like, I would literally sit in the library for hours and hours and hours, and I would get good grades just because I liked researching. Like, I loved going through all the books and finding the quotes and putting it in there. So, for me, obviously, it depends how big the job is, because normally, it's 2 days of researching probably. If I'm going to interview Jamie Chadwick, for example, you go on and you look at all her social platforms, and then you look at, Wikipedia or any website that has all her stats, driver database, like whatever it is, and go through everything. And then once I've got all my information down, I'll start to highlight things because, if I've got a 20-minute slot, I can't be talking about all my research. So it's like, okay, highlight this, highlight that. We want to talk about that. But I never have like a structure. It's more just like I might write down 50 questions and then only say 10 or 15 of them. But it's nice to have it because I've got quite a photographic memory. So I can actually like sometimes see the questions like in my head. But most of the time you don't need that because it's quite natural and organic anyway when you're talking to someone. So that's one thing I always say to people: don't feel like you need to follow a set structure, because if my question is about, tell me about Daytona, and then she starts talking about Indy next, I'll be like, oh, you need to be able to like flip flop between questions. So if my next question was about Daytona again, you have to get rid of it. So it's basically just get any information that you can and just soak it up like a sponge, and then you just see what happens on the day.
I'm curious because obviously you spoke at the beginning about how acting was something you were really intrigued in. And obviously you're in presenting now, which means you do have to speak on the fly a little bit more. Is it difficult going from scripted to having to speak on the fly for you?
It was at the start, 100%. Like, that's a really good question because obviously, like, I was used to scripted all the time, and like we never really did any like improv or anything at uni. So, there wasn't any of that just making things up. And then at the start I was like, oh my gosh, like at the start I tried to script as much as I could. Like, I would learn lines before going out like live, and I was like, this is not good. This is really time consuming, and then I'm going to get stressed out because I can't remember it. And then you're thrown like, if I remember, actually it was the GT Cup, and I normally have my co-presenter with me, and this was like my first, pit lane reporting job. And then in my ear they're like, okay, Amber, yeah, you're gonna go live in 5. And I was like, live in 5? No, we're not live for like another hour. And they were like, no, it's been cut short. So I was like, oh, okay. And they're like, your co-presenter's not there, so it's just you. I was like, oh my gosh, I've not prepared anything, like what am I even talking about? But those situations made me learn so much more because you really have to just rely on your brain. And that's what I'd say now is like another piece of advice: is you just have to rely on yourself. That's why it's important to do the research, because hopefully it's there somewhere. in your brain. And I think maybe the acting actually helped slightly because I had to memorize so much. My brain is like a sponge. So when I research, I'm just praying to God that it's still in there when I go live. So then you can just reel off any piece of information. But it was definitely tricky at the start.
You spoke about earlier as well that you did about 4 months of presenter training, so to say, when you were at uni. Now, I don't want to crap all over university and say it's bad and it's not worth going, but I personally found that I learned more about being a good presenter and being a good interviewer when I was actually working. When I was working at the BBC doing
Yeah.
shows, I really feel like that's where I learned my skill. Do you feel the same now that you're working, that you're constantly learning a lot more now?
Yes, 100%. You do because you're actually in that working environment. I think at uni you can be quite relaxed because it's not going out anywhere. It's going to my lecture, it's going to whatever. And I don't know if it was the same for you, but my course, because it was so big, you would have like two people that wanted to be presenters in a class of 20. So the 18 didn't even want to be there. So people weren't taking it seriously. So sometimes it was quite hard. And you could tell the presenter lecturer had favourites because obviously she favourites the one that actually wants to be a presenter. So like me and my friend were obviously the favourites because we took it seriously. Whereas like everyone else didn't. So that was really tricky because then I felt like if everyone wanted to do it, you could maybe get the most out of it. So it's difficult, but at the same time, I do think it gave me a lot of skills in terms of, teleprompts or something like that, because it can be quite tricky to learn how to use them on the job. So we did a lot of that, and we had access to all of, the equipment, and I utilized it. That was another, like, I just give the tips everywhere. Everyone's like, even if you're not asking for them, I'm just reeling them off, because at uni, you do your lesson, and a lot of the time, like you say, you're not actually learning a lot. You really had to put more effort outside of your lessons to learn stuff. So I would book the equipment, I would like book the technicians as well, one-to-one sessions. How do I use this camera? How can I do this? And then I was so much more efficient. So then I could, do some presenting stuff by myself, set up the camera, set up the mics, everything's ready to go. And I actually learned more outside the lessons, but 100% you learn it more on the job. And I think that's just natural because you're doing it 10 times more. Whereas at uni, like I said, it was for 3 months of presenting, whereas now it's like every day or every other day, so you're always learning.
You mentioned booking out technicians, learning how to use all of the equipment. How important is that for you now when it comes to working? How regularly are you having to figure out how to use equipment now, or is that done by someone else?
Thankfully now it's done by someone else. I'm like, I don't want to touch it, please. Like literally yesterday I was on a shoot and then they came over and they were like, right, here's the mic, and I was like, please can you put it on, because I am just going to be here forever, like trying to attach it to my top and then make sure it's on and stuff like that. So now it's quite nice that I'm like, yeah, you check it for me. And like when I did the pit lane reporting jobs, they've got loads of people, all the sound technicians, to be like, okay, is it on? Great. So now you don't have to worry as much, but it's different because if you do at home recordings, of course it's you doing everything. However, my partner has his own production company and he's a videographer and stuntman and all sorts. So I'm like, right, can you come in and just fix this? And what's going on with my camera? Why is it not working? So if I, need any help, I can also lean on him, which is amazing. Now I'm like, I don't want to touch the tech, please.
You've got a technician at home, so why wouldn't you utilize
Yes.
that?
Exactly. I'm like, right, what's going on? Why is it not loading? And he comes in and fixes everything, which is great. But the knowledge is there. Like, if I really had to do it myself, I could, but I just don't want to. I'm like, please let me just get in front of the camera, and that's that.
I'm so glad you said that because that's the exact same way that I feel. I can do the tech stuff, but do I want to do it?
No.
No, no, thanks.
Who wants to do that, honestly? Like, if our passion is the talking, just let us get on with the talking.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk about the buzz of going live, and I'd love you to put it into your own words because my favorite thing is the thrill of the countdown. I love it because when you're finally live, you just have to go. You can't
Yeah.
really do the thinking bit anymore. There's no time to really do the thinking bit. You just have to do. Can you
Yeah.
put it into your own words?
It's definitely an adrenaline rush. I actually had this conversation yesterday. Like someone said to me, do you prefer live or recorded? And I was like, live 100%. Because you don't have the room to sort of be like, oh, let's do it again. Oh, okay, didn't like that take, let's do it again. That's why I fell out of love with the acting at uni, because we did a lot of screen acting. The theatre I loved. I'm like, I can do theatre all day. But the screen acting, oh no, take two, take three, no, take, and I'm like, oh, come on. I don't want to do 5,000 takes. I just want it to be live and authentic and in person. And that's why there's that rush, because it literally is, okay, calm, calm, calm. Oh my gosh, we're on camera. And it is like a performance, I guess, you know, even if it's not acting, like presenting is still you, but just you heightened. And I think it's great. You can bring out everything amazing about yourself and just heighten it. So I prefer that, because there's this massive buzz when you come off air or you've just hosted an event. You're like, wow, that's crazy, that's amazing, like we've just done that. And I love that feeling 10 times more than recorded things. But I don't know if it's the same for you. Like, do you prefer live than recorded?
I'm the same as you. I much more prefer doing stuff live because it's you just have to do it. There's
Yeah,
no doubt because you don't have time to doubt what you're saying. You
yeah,
just have to get the job done. I absolutely love it because like you said, when it comes to recording, you're like, "Oh, could I have said it in a different way which sounded a little
yeah,
bit better? Did I stutter? Did I slur
yeah,
my words a little bit? Did I actually say that? Did I pronounce that name right?" I don't want to
exactly.
have to think about that.
Exactly. You watch it back and you're like, no, no, we can do it better. It's fine. But if you're live, you can't watch yourself back. You're like, oh, okay, great, moving on. I made a mistake. Who cares? We're off. So that's why live is so much better.
Definitely. Now, you've interviewed a lot of people, you get to speak to a lot of people. Who is your favourite person that you've had the pleasure of interviewing so far? Obviously, so far, because there's more to come.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a really hard question. I mean, we've already spoken about this amazing person before, but I think she's like the most seamless to interview, and it has to be Jamie Chadwick. There's never an awkward moment. She gives like the perfect length of answers. They're not too short, where you're like, okay, quick, next question, but then they're not too long, where sometimes, I don't know if you find that, where you can kind of get sidetracked because they're talking for so long. You're like, I forgot what my next question is now, and
Yeah.
then she's ended her point, so I have to think of a new question. It's not a follow-on question, so sometimes you don't want them to speak for too long either. And Jamie just gives the perfect amount, and she's so eloquent, and there's so much to talk about with her. You know, is it like a female in racing perspective, or is it what she's achieving at the minute? You know, are we talking about sim racing, are we talking about the technicality of racing? With Jamie, I just feel like me and her can talk for hours and hours and hours. So I think it might have to be Jamie, but I'm trying to think if there's someone else that's my favorite. But so far, I think it is Jamie Chadwick.
Well, that's a good interview then. How do you manage, not a bad interview, but someone who is just a little bit, you're kind of trying to draw blood from a stone? How do you manage that and deal with that? Because I'm one of those people who I can kind of manage it, but I lose all of my motivation as well, and
Yeah,
then I start panicking. How do you deal with that?
it's a really good question, to be honest, because you will always have those people that do not want to speak to you at all. And obviously, they have to, they're obliged to speak to you, but they're going to be a bit like Kimi Raikkonen and just give you one word answers. And you're like, oh my gosh. I think it's more, you know, relying on your research again and trying to give them open-ended questions so that their answers have to be long. They can't just be like, yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was a great race. Or like, yeah, cool. Like, say if it's like, you know, what are you expecting for the upcoming season? And then they can't just say, oh, to do better. And even if they did say, oh, we'll do better, I'd be like, okay, so how are you going to do better? You just need to be quick, quick, quick with those types of people. It's like, okay, what can we actually talk about? But it takes a lot more mental energy because you're working so hard to be like, I need to think of a question that just gets them to talk a little bit more. But I always find that like adding a little bit of humour helps. I
Yeah.
don't know if you found that. And obviously, it depends on the job, because if it's a really serious job and they don't want you to be humorous, and sometimes I did get that like very early on in my career, it was like, okay, great, we love your energy, but this is motorsport and it's serious and maybe tone it down a little. But then now I don't really get that at all. It's like, you know, it's the perfect serious with a bit of humor. It's not like one or the other really. So adding a bit of humor or like something to do with them personally, or something that's quite funny about yourself that might make the interview a bit lighthearted and maybe just make them laugh or talk a little bit more. That's probably the best thing to do. But it's difficult because you're really like your brain is churning away to be like, oh my gosh, they do not want to talk to me. What do we do? But you just keep going, have to be persistent.
It's the issue when you then start making mistakes. I did an interview with someone once, and we were talking about Sebastian Vettel, and because it'd been quite a difficult interview and I was losing my mojo a little bit, I think I then called him like a five-time world champion, and they then corrected me, and I was like,
No,
I'm gonna go and cry. I'm done. This career is not for me anymore. Oh, felt like I was just gonna go home
no.
and cry.
It's the worst though, isn't it? Like when you make a mistake, then you're like, oh, should I be a presenter? Like, and you doubt yourself so much, and it's so annoying because you know you're a good presenter, you know you're great at what you do, but that one moment, because that interview wasn't going so well, so you just sort of let something go slightly, you beat yourself up and you shouldn't, and it's the worst thing. I think in this industry, we are definitely our worst critics. 100%. So those moments are horrible, but you just have to get over them. You're like, you know what? Park it and then learn from it. So obviously now you're like, right, we don't want that to happen again. What can I do so that never happens to me again?
How do you manage bad days like that then when things maybe aren't just going your way? How do you manage to motivate yourself to come back better again?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I think friends and family, and it's very cliche, that answer, but it's always good just to have someone to talk to, if you're like, oh, I made a mistake today and I don't know. And I had so many of those moments, and like I'm not afraid to admit it at all. And I think some people get shocked because they're like, wow, like you do this and you do that. And I'm like, no, genuinely, I am my worst critic. Like you say, one mistake, because I'm a perfectionist, one little mistake and I'm questioning everything. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I think it's so normal because I think you have to be a perfectionist to be in this industry. If you turn up and you're like half-assed and you just don't care, what's the point? What is the point of that? So I think talking to people, because of course, even if maybe you weren't amazing at what you do, your friends and family are still going to be like, no, you're amazing. So just to hear some nice feedback is always great. But if you don't have access to that, it's always just chill. Just get yourself in the zone, whatever that is. So I'll go like meditate, I'll like take myself off social media, do whatever makes me happy just to get back in that happy place. I know I'm just having a minute of like, oh no, self critique, all this rubbish going around my head, but you just need to sort of get out of that. So, whatever helps you, just run with that. If it's the gym, if it's ice cream, if it's like Netflix, whatever it is, just try and do something to take your mind off it, because then you'll do your next job and it went perfect, I guess, and you're like, yeah, this is for me. Wow, I'm the most amazing presenter. So there's lots of highs and lows. You just have to know that you're going to have both.
Definitely. Now I'm going to change it up a bit, switch it up. Let's talk about some of the motorsport events that you've been to because I follow you on LinkedIn. I see your photos of you at all
LinkedIn.
of these incredible events. What's been your favourite one so far?
Oh, you're coming at me with all these good questions, and my brain's like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking back. Working at Silverstone was probably good. I mean, is that an event? I guess because I was working, but obviously that was probably one of my favorite events this year. Um, the thing is, because I work at a lot of them, I'm like, that's still an event. I can say it's my favorite. Like, I'm not just attending. Formula E was amazing. I went to the finale of that, and that was really great. I went to a Formula E race, I think last year or the year before, and then we went to this one in London, and the vibes were just on point. I think Formula E is a very competitive but also relaxed environment. There's not loads of crazy people running around, and it's not as if you can't talk to the drivers. Like, you can actually talk to the drivers, and we were in the garages quite a bit, and that's nice to go there, be relaxed. I wasn't working, I was just enjoying it. You've got the confetti, it's very up close and personal, and that's what I love. And there's so much great racing in Formula E. I know some people have their opinions and people don't like electric racing, but if you just like racing as a whole, I think Formula E genuinely is where it's at. And every series has things to work on. Like, Formula One has so much to work on. So I understand the, critique from all different racing series. Not everyone's going to be happy. But I think Formula E was probably up there with one of the best. So yeah, Formula One, of course, Silverstone, Formula E, and any event with Janetta is amazing.
Yeah.
Genuinely, Janetta is just a cool, fresh, exciting company. They're very open as well, very welcoming. So anything with Janetta, got to race in a Janetta car. It was beautiful. I wanted to be a racing driver again. And then I asked them how much it was for a season. And I was like, okay, maybe not. Maybe in like 10 years when I'm rich, then I might start, putting in like 200 grand for a season, but not now. No
Oh,
chance.
yeah, not quite yet. No,
No.
I don't think I would feel happy. I could buy a house with that money.
Exactly.
Crazy.
Exactly.
Crazy. I'm so glad you mentioned Formula E though, because I feel like I'm one of Formula E's biggest advocates. The races are just so entertaining in themselves, but even the whole setup, it's not just the
Yeah.
racing that's fun, it's the fan village, the drivers, the teams are so accessible, and they
Yeah.
absolutely adore all of their fans as well. It's one of those events where you leave feeling happy and feeling like it's been a really good weekend. I think I've gone for the last 3, 4 years now with my friends, and it's one of those, it just never gets old. I just will
Yeah.
never get bored of Formula E. So, so good.
Exactly. There's so much going on. Like you say, like I even forgot about the fan zones. The fan zones are so amazing. Like I was there for ages. I took my partner with me as well, and he's never been, and he was having a great time in the fan zones. We're on all the different activities. So it's not just about, hospitality access. It's everything about Formula E. Because like the fan zone is literally what, like across the hall from the grandstands and the hospitality. Everything is so close. So you're all sort of in the same proximity that it just feels like, I don't know, it just there's more of an adrenaline rush, I think, because it's not like, oh, the paddock is all the way over there and I can't get anywhere close to it and I haven't got access to this part and to that part. Like you don't really notice that as much, I think, at Formula E.
I completely agree with you. They've managed to do something right there. Whoever is doing all of that stuff, you're doing a great job. I hope you're listening, and I hope, give yourself a pat on the back.
We'll find them on LinkedIn. We'll be like, hey, you're doing amazing, sweetie. We love this.
Exactly, LinkedIn. They need to sponsor you, Amber. Why have they not done this yet?
Do. Honestly, everywhere I go, like literally, I hosted an event in Sheffield, and it was like a women in sport forum, and I got, similar questions. It was like, how do you network and stuff. And I spoke about LinkedIn like 5,000 times that night, and someone did say to me, they're like, "Oh, are you sponsored?" I was like, "No, I wish I was sponsored by them. I should be. When I get my racing suit, I'm getting a racing suit. I think I might just put LinkedIn on there and then just message them and be like, just sponsor me, hun. You're already on there."
Where's the paycheck for every time you mention them, honestly?
Exactly. I would be rich and then I could race. That's what I need to
You'll be in
do.
Ginetta. It'll all work out.
Yes. Do you know,
Well,
now
yeah,
you're giving me all these ideas,
I need to
honestly.
slow down and stop. You mentioned women in sport then. We have to talk about women in motorsport because I'm sure it's something equally important to the both of us. How important is it for us to show young girls that there really is a place for them in motorsport?
Oh, it's so important, and I think it's a very personal thing for me, like I say, because growing up I didn't have that around me. When you ask me about who was I karting with, it really was a lot of boys. Like I would take the girls with me, but the girls just didn't really like it as much. And I go back to that point of, because it just wasn't a thing. You're seen as like a tomboy if you were karting and doing like motorsport stuff. And like obviously it was my dad that liked Formula One, so there wasn't a lot of women being in my conversations of how I got into it. So now I hope that there'll be a lot of girls being like, oh, I watch this person, I watch this person, I look up to her as a racer or engineer or presenter or whatever it is. You really need that. And you can see the sort of traction we're getting now of more girls being involved in the sport, because it's like second nature. If it's not second nature, if it's not talked about, if it's not, televised, then how are people going to get more people involved, more girls involved in it? So it's so important. But I work with a lot of young girls in karting right now, and it's just something that really warms my heart. I'm like, media training them, helping them, get to hopefully Formula One level or Formula E or whatever it is, GT series, whatever they want to do, and just like push them to say that you can get there. It's not as if you don't belong here. Make sure you never feel like that, because you do belong here. We're working on getting more people there so you can see yourself represented a little bit better.
Well, you were doing karting when you were younger, and now you're working with a lot of younger girls now who are karting. Can you see that kind of change in perspective, perhaps, where people are now more like, yes, I'm a girl and I can drive and race? Have you noticed that change?
Yes, definitely. I mean, you're always going to get the comments, you're always going to get that. And I think we are fighting that. So hopefully in 10 years, we're not always going to get that. So now you still hear, oh, you're good for a girl. And it's like, what do you mean? I'm good as a racer. Let's just keep it at that. I'm not good for a girl. So we need to get rid of all these annoying comments, because you don't want the girls that are racing to be affected by that. That's the issue. And some of them, do say, the girls that I work with, sometimes they can feel intimidated because they're the only girl on track. And, they say that naturally boys are more aggressive. I don't think it's naturally. I just think it's because there are more boys in the series, and that's it. That the girls might not have the confidence to be aggressive. So it's not as if, oh, it's a boy thing. The girls can be just as aggressive, but we need to make sure there's more of them and they feel comfortable to then let out that side. So definitely, I think it is getting better. The more girls there are, the better it will be. So if there's still only like two girls on track, you probably are going to get those comments, which is annoying. And it's just, I think people don't mean, I mean, most people, not like you do get the really horrible, like negative ones, but a lot of people, what I found in the old generation, because, they've not seen women be involved in racing when, they were younger, it's just not normal to them. So their comments, they don't think they're actually saying anything wrong. They're just like, oh, boys like racing and girls like Barbies. And they think that's how it is because that's how they were brought up. But it's not the case. So we just need to educate, not in a way where you're like bombarding them. You're just being like, okay, yeah, I can recognize that's how it was in your day. But now it's not like that. Now girls are into racing. There's way more exposure. So let's just park the comments, just leave that and just move on from it. We're here to stay.
Okay, I really like that. And it kind of leads perfectly into our next question. We're asking all of our guests this when they come on. If you could speak to little younger Amber now who loves her karting, what would you say to her?
Oh, I would say keep going, keep pushing. You know, everything in life happens for a reason. And that's what I found as I've got older. Everything happens for a reason. So the lows are meant to happen, the highs are meant to happen. You'll love karting for a bit and then you might steer away from it, but then you're going to come back to it. Everything happens. Your passions will always be reignited. So just keep going and you'll be very proud of yourself in a few years and even prouder when I'm on a racetrack as a racing driver.
Amazing. And finally, to wrap things up, what advice would you give to aspiring presenters?
Oh, okay. Get all my tips that I've given to literally like everyone in the past few weeks because I do get a lot of messages from friends that want to try and like transition into a presenting role now. It's more get your show reel. Let's start off with that. You need a good show reel because how is anyone gonna, take you seriously if you have no evidence to show? So get a show reel, and that can be TikTok stuff. That can be literally like you film it on your phone and you put it on YouTube. You don't need to have the best equipment in the world. You can just order, a cheaper microphone on Amazon or something like that. Get it, as long as it records your audio, you're fine. All you need is like a phone, a microphone, maybe some headphones, and do whatever. Talk to camera. Just get loads of experience just talking to camera and get experience like with people around you because you might get into this pattern of like doing it at home and then they throw you in a live situation and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never done this before. If you don't have the acting background or a presenting background, whatever it is, can be quite daunting. So get your friends, do whatever and then network, LinkedIn, 100%. Get on LinkedIn. Do you know what? LinkedIn is going to be so oversaturated by the time I'm done with it. Genuinely.
Yeah,
It's going to be packed. But get on LinkedIn and post whatever you're doing. Just keep posting. If it's you and your friends at a karting track, post that on LinkedIn. And hopefully, you'll get to where you want to be. Do loads of different jobs. Don't just, if you want to be a motorsport presenter, don't just focus on it has to be motorsport jobs because if your CV is full of loads of different presenting, you're going to look way more valuable to someone that has maybe just got a few, maybe big jobs, but it might be a few. So they might trust you more because you've done all the different mediums. So they're my top 3 tips. That was 3, wasn't it? I think.
that was 3. Yes. Well, Amber, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story so far. We're so excited to see what is next for you. We will be back very, very soon with more stories to share. Thank you guys so much for watching.